Broken heart after my sister died. My husband abused me until I became pregnant. Then I fought back. My name is Clara. I am 62 years old and I am speaking to you all the way from Dallas, Texas, here in the United States of America. Before I even start this story, I want you to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and click on the notification bell so that you never miss another one of my life stories. And please tell me in the comments from which part of the country you are watching from, because I always love to know where my family here online is tuning in from. Now let me take you straight into the darkest moment of my life. I was lying on the cold bedroom floor, bleeding, crying, and holding my stomach with both hands. My husband, the man I had once trusted with my heart, had just thrown me against the wall again. That night, I realized I was pregnant, but not because of love, no. My pregnancy came from nights of abuse, from screams nobody heard, from bruises that nobody saw. The man who was supposed to protect me had broken me down piece by piece, until I thought there was nothing left of me to save. But what he didn't know was that this same pain was going to wake something inside of me. Something fierce, something unstoppable. And the night I found out about that pregnancy was the night I swore that I would fight back, no matter the cost. And that night, everything changed forever. But let me take you back, so you can understand how I got here. I wasn't always this broken woman. Once I was full of dreams, laughter, and hope. It all started when I was just 19 years old. My sister, Abigail, was my best friend in the world. She was 2 years older than me, beautiful, with long blonde hair that seemed to shine under the sun. Abigail was like my shield. She always stood up for me, always defended me, always reminded me that I deserved happiness. She was more than a sister. She was my other half. But life has a way of tearing happiness from your hands. One rainy evening as she was driving home from college, Abigail got into a terrible accident. I can still hear the phone call in my head, the shaky voice on the other end telling me, "I'm sorry she didn't make it." I screamed so loud the neighbors rushed to the house. My whole world collapsed in that one moment. Abigail was gone. My protector was gone. The person who made me feel safe in this cold world gone forever. The funeral was filled with tears and whispers. I remember holding my mother's hand, both of us shaking as we stared at the coffin. I thought my life was over. I thought nothing could be worse than losing her. But I was wrong. It was at that very funeral that I first noticed him. His name was David. He was handsome, quiet, and kind, or at least that's what I thought. He stood near the back of the church, and when everyone else avoided me, he came and placed his hand gently on my shoulder. He said, "I'm so sorry for your loss. If you ever need a friend, I'm here." I was broken, and David looked like someone who cared. Little did I know, I was walking into a trap. In the weeks after Abigail's death, I sank into depression. David started visiting me. He would bring me flowers, take me on walks, tell me stories to make me laugh. Slowly, I began to lean on him. And after months of grief, I let him in. I thought maybe, just maybe, God had sent me someone to help me through the pain. For a while, it seemed like that. We got married 2 years later. Everyone in town said I was lucky to have such a kind man after all I had been through. And I believed them. I believed him. But the mask doesn't stay on forever. The first slap came on our wedding night. I had said something small, something silly about being nervous, and suddenly his face twisted. His hand came across my cheek so fast I didn't even feel the sting until seconds later. I stood there frozen, tears filling my eyes, waiting for him to say sorry. But he didn't. He looked at me and said, "Don't ever embarrass me like that again." That was the beginning. What followed were years of control, anger, and pain. He kept me away from friends. He shouted at me for little things. Then he started hitting me. Sometimes with his fists. Sometimes with a belt. I covered the bruises with makeup and lies. Oh, I fell down the stairs. Oh, I bumped into the cabinet. Nobody knew. Or maybe they pretended not to see. And then one night, after months of his violence, I felt something inside my body shift. I was sick in the mornings, weak all the time. I took a test. Positive. Pregnant. But instead of joy, I cried. I cried because I knew this child was not born from love, but from suffering. And as I sat there on the bathroom floor, staring at the 2 red lines on the test, I swore to myself, he will never destroy this baby the way he destroyed me. That was the night something inside me rose up. A fire. A fight. And I knew I could not keep living this way. But the very next day when I tried to stand up for myself, when I whispered to him that I was pregnant and he had to stop hurting me, what he did left me gasping for air, bleeding, and begging God to save me. And that is where my story really begins. The moment I told David that I was pregnant, I expected, even hoped, that maybe he would soften. I thought the news of a baby would melt his heart, that he would see me not as his punching bag, but as the mother of his child. But instead he laughed. A cold, sharp laugh that cut me deeper than any slap ever had. Pregnant, he sneered. You think that makes you special? You think that changes anything? Before I could answer, his fist slammed into my stomach. The same stomach where our baby was growing. I fell to the floor, clutching myself, gasping, unable to breathe. The pain was blinding. Don't you ever threaten me with that baby, he said, towering over me. You're mine. Do you hear me? Mine. I was too weak to move, but in that moment I swore silently. He will never own me. Not anymore. But I had to survive first. Now let me take you back a little. Because you need to understand how David's shadow grew over every part of my life before it came to this point. After our wedding, David slowly made sure I had nobody else but him. He convinced me to quit my little bakery job, saying, "A good wife stays home and takes care of her husband." First, I thought he just wanted me to rest. But soon I realized it was control. He didn't want me to earn money. He didn't want me to have friends. He isolated me. When my mother called, he stood nearby listening to every word. When neighbors stopped by, he answered the door himself and told them I was too tired. My world became smaller and smaller, until the walls of that house felt like a prison. There were good days though, or at least what I thought were good days. Sometimes he brought me flowers. Sometimes he kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. And those moments confused me. I held on to them, because I wanted to believe the man I first fell in love with was still there. That the abuse was just a bad mood, a mistake. But the truth is, those good moments were just part of the trap. They kept me hoping, forgiving, and staying. When I found out I was pregnant, part of me was terrified, but part of me also thought, maybe this child will change him. Maybe a father's love would heal the darkness inside of him. But no. Instead, it made things worse. David began accusing me of carrying a child that wasn't his. He said I was sleeping with other men, even though I hadn't spoken to anyone in months. His jealousy turned into rage. He would lock me in the bedroom for hours. Sometimes he wouldn't let me eat until he decided I deserved it. And then came the night that almost ended it all. It was late, maybe midnight. I had just whispered my prayers, begging God to keep the baby safe, when David stormed into the room drunk. His eyes were wild. He accused me again of cheating, screaming that the baby wasn't his. Before I could defend myself, he grabbed me by the neck and pinned me against the wall. His hand tightened, squeezing the air out of me. My feet kicked helplessly against the floor. My vision blurred. I thought, this is it. He's going to kill me and the baby. But then, something inside me snapped. I don't know where the strength came from, but I clawed at his arm, kicked with every bit of power left in me, and somehow I broke free. I ran barefoot, pregnant, shaking, straight out of the house into the cold night. I ran until my legs gave out. I collapsed on the side of the road, gasping, crying, bleeding from my lip. And that's where someone found me. A car slowed down. Headlights stopped. The door opened. And when I looked up, I saw a face I hadn't seen in years. When I lifted my head and wiped the blood from my mouth, my heart nearly stopped. The face staring down at me from the glow of the car's headlights was one I thought I'd never see again. It was Michael, my sister Abigail's fiancé. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Michael had disappeared after Abigail's death, broken and silent, and no one in town had heard from him again. But here he was, kneeling beside me, his eyes wide with shock. "Clara," he whispered, his voice shaking. What happened to you?" Tears poured down my cheeks. I couldn't even answer. I was too ashamed, too broken. He gently lifted me into his car and wrapped a blanket around me. His hands trembled as he started the engine. "You're safe now," he promised. "I won't let anything happen to you." But safety. That was just a word. Because the moment I thought I had escaped David, life pulled me right back into his storm. Let me tell you how. Michael drove me to his small apartment on the other side of town. It was simple, one bedroom, a couch, and barely any furniture, but it felt like a palace compared to the prison I had run from. He gave me tea, sat me down, and begged me to tell him the truth. At first, I stayed silent. I didn't want anyone to know the hell I was living in. But then Michael looked at me with those sad eyes, and I broke. I told him everything. The slaps, the kicks, the lies, the loneliness, the pregnancy. By the time I finished, his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had turned white. That monster, Michael muttered. He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of hope. Someone knew. Someone cared. Someone believed me. Michael offered to let me stay with him. He said, "Clara, you're not going back there. Not ever." For 2 weeks, I stayed in that little apartment. And in those 2 weeks, I tasted peace again. I laughed. I ate without fear. I sang to my unborn child. Michael took care of me the way a brother would. He reminded me of Abigail, and sometimes I would cry, wishing she could see how he was saving me now. But happiness never lasts long when you're running from a man like David. One evening, I stepped out of the apartment to buy some bread from the corner store. As I walked back, I noticed something strange. A shadow. A figure leaning against the lamppost across the street. My stomach dropped. It was David. He had found me. His eyes were burning with fury, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. He didn't say a word. He just stared at me like a wolf ready to tear into its prey. I froze in fear, the bag of bread slipping from my hands onto the sidewalk. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought the whole world could hear it. And then he started walking toward me. David's steps echoed on the pavement as he came closer. My legs felt frozen in place like they were trapped in cement. "Clara," he growled, his voice low but sharp. "You think you can run from me?" I shook my head, stammering. Please, David. I just needed peace. I just needed peace." He laughed bitterly. "You'll get peace when I say you get peace. You're my wife. You belong to me." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. I wanted to run, but my body refused. Then suddenly, the apartment door swung open. Michael came rushing out, his face pale as he saw David standing just a few feet from me. "Leave her alone, David," Michael shouted. "If you touch her again, you'll regret it." David's eyes narrowed. "Oh, look who it is. The ghost of Abigail's past." His smirk twisted into something cruel. "So this is where you've been hiding, Clara? With him? You really are pathetic." Before I could react, David lunged forward. Michael stepped between us, shoving him back. They struggled, fists flying, grunts filling the night air. I screamed for them to stop, but it was like neither of them could hear me. In the chaos, David swung and punched Michael hard in the jaw. Michael stumbled but didn't fall. He came back with a hit of his own, catching David right in the face. Blood poured from David's nose. "Stay down," Michael yelled. But David never stayed down. He roared like a beast and charged again. This time he grabbed me by the wrist and yanked me toward him. "You're coming home with me," he shouted. "No." I screamed, fighting against his grip. My stomach twisted with pain from the force. I thought of the baby. I thought of how close I had come to losing it once already. Michael lunged, pulling me back toward him. For a moment it felt like my arm would rip in half as the two men tugged me in opposite directions. Then suddenly tires screeched. Headlights blazed. A car came speeding down the street, horn blaring. None of us saw it coming. In one split second everything slowed down. The car swerved, trying not to hit us. Michael shoved me out of the way, and I fell hard onto the sidewalk. My vision spun. My ears rang. When I looked up, I saw something that made my blood run cold. David wasn't standing anymore. He was lying in the middle of the street, motionless. For a moment the world went silent. The sound of the car's horn faded, the city lights blurred, and all I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. David lay sprawled across the asphalt, his body twisted, his face pale, blood trickling from his mouth. I gasped, covering my mouth with my hands. "Oh my God! Michael rushed to his side, kneeling down, checking for signs of life. The driver of the car, a middle-aged man in a business suit, jumped out shouting, "I didn't see him. He came out of nowhere." His hands shook as he held his head in disbelief. Michael pressed 2 fingers to David's neck, searching for a pulse. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. For a terrifying second I thought he would say David was dead. But then Michael muttered, "He's alive but barely." Relief and fear hit me at the same time. I didn't know if I wanted him to live or die. All I knew was that even lying there, unconscious, David still terrified me. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights filled the street. An ambulance arrived, paramedics rushing out with a stretcher. They lifted David carefully, strapping him in, checking his breathing. "Is he your husband?" one of them asked me. I hesitated. My lips trembled. "Yes," I whispered. "He's my husband." Those words felt like chains around my neck. They loaded David into the ambulance, and as the doors shut I thought that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance at freedom. If he didn't wake up, I could finally breathe again. But deep inside I knew David was a man too stubborn to die. And I was right. The very next day, while Michael urged me to stay at his apartment, the hospital called. David was awake. He had survived. I froze when I heard the words. My hand shook so badly I dropped the phone. Michael picked it up and spoke to the nurse, but all I could think was, "He's coming back for me." And I was right again. Because 2 nights later, as I lay on Michael's couch trying to sleep, a knock echoed through the apartment door. Slow, heavy, dangerous. Michael tensed. "Stay here," he whispered, grabbing a baseball bat from behind the door. He opened it carefully, and there he was, David. His face was bandaged, his arm in a sling, but his eyes burned with the same fire as always. He didn't look like a man who had almost died. He looked like a man who had come back from hell with revenge in his heart. And the first words out of his mouth chilled me to my bones. "Clara, pack your things. You're coming home." David's words sliced through the air like a knife. "Clara, pack your things. You're coming home." My heart dropped into my stomach. For a moment I couldn't breathe. His body was weak, wrapped in bandages, but his voice, his eyes were just as strong, just as terrifying as ever. Michael gripped the baseball bat tighter. "She's not going anywhere with you," he snapped. "You've done enough damage." David smirked, his lips curling with cruelty. "What are you now, her savior? You think you can replace Abigail by protecting her little sister?" He leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom. "You'll never be anything but a shadow in my story." Michael's jaw tightened. He stepped outside, blocking the doorway completely. "Leave, David, before I make sure you never come back." For a moment I thought David would back down. His arm was in a sling, his face bruised, his body broken. But instead, he leaned in closer, staring at me past Michael's shoulder. "You think you can hide from me, Clara?" His voice was low, almost calm now. "You're my wife. And if you don't come back home," he paused, his eyes narrowing into slits, "then maybe I'll just burn down this little apartment, with both of you inside." My blood froze. Michael raised the bat, his body trembling with rage. "Get out now, or I swear." But before he could finish, David spat on the ground, turned slowly, and walked away into the night. His limp made him look weaker, but the way he glanced back over his shoulder told me one thing. He wasn't giving up. The silence afterward was suffocating. Michael locked the door, dropped the bat, and pulled me into his arms. "He's not going to hurt you again," he whispered. But his voice shook, and I knew even he didn't believe those words fully. For the next few days I barely slept. Every creak of the floor, every rustle of the wind outside the window made me jump. I knew David was watching. I could feel it in my bones. Then one night it happened. Michael had stepped out to buy groceries. I was alone in the apartment, curled on the couch with a blanket, trying to calm myself with soft music. Suddenly the lights flickered, then went out. The entire apartment was swallowed by darkness. My chest tightened as fear wrapped its hands around my throat. I stumbled toward the drawer to grab a candle when I heard it. A faint scratching sound at the window. At first I thought it was just the tree branches swaying in the wind. But then came the sound again. Louder. Sharper. like fingernails dragging against glass. I turned slowly. My stomach dropped. There, outside the window on the fire escape, was David's face. Pale, bandaged, smiling. His smile was the kind that made my blood run cold. David pressed his bandaged hand against the glass, his breath fogging up the window. "Clara," he whispered through the pain. "You can't hide from me. You'll always be mine." My heart hammered in my chest. My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the candle I had just lit. I stumbled backward, whispering prayers under my breath, hoping Michael would come back soon. But David wasn't waiting. He rattled the window frame, testing it, pushing harder each time. The glass groaned under the pressure. "No, no, please," I whispered, clutching my stomach. I thought of the baby. I thought of how close I had come to losing it already. I couldn't let David touch me again, not now, not ever. Finally, I found the courage to scream. "Help! Somebody help!" My voice echoed through the apartment walls. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a dog bark. Lights flicked on in a neighboring window. David froze, his eyes narrowing with fury. For a moment, I thought he would smash the glass and come in anyway. But then slowly he pulled his hand away. He tapped the window twice, tap, tap, like a warning. Then he vanished into the shadows of the fire escape. I collapsed to the floor, sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. My body felt like it was splitting apart under the weight of fear. Moments later, the door burst open. Michael rushed in, groceries spilling from his arms as he dropped everything and ran to me. "Clara, what happened?" I pointed to the window, my words broken. He was here. David was here. Michael's face hardened. He stormed to the window, looked out onto the fire escape, but of course David was gone. "That's it," Michael said through clenched teeth. "We're going to the police. Tonight." The thought filled me with both relief and dread. Relief because maybe, just maybe, justice would protect me. Dread because I knew David. I knew how slippery, how manipulative he could be. He could twist anything into a lie, and people often believed him. Still, I nodded. I couldn't keep living like this. The next morning, Michael drove me to the police station. My hands trembled as I filed the report, telling the officer everything. About the abuse, about the pregnancy, about David stalking me. The officer took notes, nodded sympathetically, and promised to look into it. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. When we left, I turned to Michael, tears in my eyes. What if they don't believe me? What if he comes back? Michael placed a hand on my shoulder. "Then we'll protect you ourselves. I won't let him near you again." For a few days things were quiet. Too quiet. I almost began to believe maybe David had finally given up. But then one evening, as Michael and I sat eating dinner in his small kitchen, a knock rattled the front door. Not a gentle knock. Not the knock of a neighbor. A slow, steady, heavy knock. Michael froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. My chest tightened. We both knew that knock. Michael grabbed the bat again, motioning for me to stay back. He opened the door just a crack. And standing there wasn't David. It was two police officers. "Are you Clara Johnson?" One of them asked, his tone flat. I stepped forward nervously. "Yes, I am." The officer exchanged a look with his partner before pulling out a folded paper. "We have a warrant. You're under investigation for assault against your husband, David Johnson." My knees buckled. The room spun. David had turned the tables. The words hit me like a thunderbolt. "Assault against your husband?" I whispered, my voice cracking. No, that's not true. I'm the victim. He's the one who—" "Ma'am," the officer interrupted, his tone clipped. "We're just doing our job. You'll need to come with us." Michael stepped forward, fury in his eyes. "This is ridiculous. She's the one being abused. You can't just take her away like this." The officer sighed. "Sir, step aside. If you interfere, we'll have no choice but to take you in too." My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body felt frozen. David had done it again. He had twisted the story, painted me as the villain, and now the law was on his side. Michael grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight. "Don't worry. I'll get you out. I promise." But his promise couldn't stop the cold steel of the handcuffs as they clicked around my wrists. They led me out of the apartment, past curious neighbors who peeked through their doors and windows. Whispers followed me down the hallway. Isn't that Clara? She always seemed so quiet. Didn't know she had it in her. Shame burned my skin as much as fear did. At the station, they sat me in a small gray room. The walls were blank, the light buzzing above me. An officer slid a stack of papers across the table. Your husband says you attacked him with a weapon. That you tried to kill him. My mouth fell open. That's a lie. He's been abusing me for years. Look at me. I tugged at my sleeves, showing the fading bruises, the fresh cuts. He did this. The officer's eyes softened for a moment, but then he cleared his throat. The thing is, ma'am, he has injuries too. Broken ribs. Concussion. Cuts. And you don't have witnesses. It's his word against yours. My stomach dropped. Broken ribs? Concussion? Those were from the car accident. He was using them against me. Tears streamed down my face. Please, you have to believe me. I'm pregnant. He nearly killed me and the baby. The officer leaned back, his expression unreadable. We'll see what the judge decides. They locked me in a holding cell that night. Cold bars. A thin blanket. The smell of disinfectant and despair. I curled into a corner whispering to my unborn child. Hold on, little one. Please just hold on. Hours passed like years. I didn't sleep. Every sound, every clang of metal doors made me jump. Then just before dawn, a guard came to unlock my cell. You've got a visitor, he said. I stood weak and trembling. My mind screamed Michael. Maybe he had come to get me out. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending. But when I stepped into the visitor's room and saw who was waiting on the other side of the glass, my heart stopped. It wasn't Michael. It was David. And he was smiling. The smile on David's face made my skin crawl. He leaned forward, pressing his hands against the glass. His bandages were gone now, replaced with neat hospital stitches, but the fire in his eyes was stronger than ever. Hello, Clara, he said softly, almost sweetly. Did you miss me? My throat tightened. I wanted to scream at him, to spit in his face, but the lump in my chest wouldn't let me speak. Finally, I forced out. Why are you here? David chuckled, tilting his head like a predator playing with its prey. To remind you of your place. You thought running off with Michael would save you? You thought hiding in his filthy apartment would protect you. His voice lowered, each word dripping with venom. No one protects you from me. Not the police. Not Michael. Not even God. I clenched my fists under the table, digging my nails into my palms. You've destroyed me enough, David. I'm not afraid of you anymore. His smile widened. Not afraid? Then why are you shaking? I looked down, realizing my hands trembled uncontrollably. My body betrayed me even when my heart screamed defiance. David leaned closer to the glass. I told them everything, Clara. I told them how you snapped. How you beat me with a bottle until I was unconscious. How you're unstable, dangerous. He smirked. And they believed me. Because who would believe a broken little housewife like you over a man like me? Tears burned my eyes. My voice cracked. You know that's a lie. You know what you did to me. Prove it, he whispered, his eyes glinting. Because you can't. The guard stepped forward. Time's up. But just before they pulled me away, David mouthed 3 chilling words through the glass. I'll kill you. Back in the cell, I collapsed onto the hard bench, sobbing silently. My baby kicked inside me, as if reminding me I wasn't alone. I placed my hands on my stomach and whispered, I will protect you. I swear it. The next day, something unexpected happened. Michael came to see me. His face was tired, his eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. The moment he saw me, he pressed his hand against the glass, his voice urgent. Clara, listen to me. I've hired a lawyer. We're going to fight this. I won't let him win. For the first time in days, hope flickered inside me. I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. But even hope couldn't erase the fear gnawing at me. David was cunning, dangerous, and he had the law wrapped around his finger. That night, I lay awake on the cold cot, replaying his words in my mind. I'll kill you. I prayed harder than I ever had before. The following morning, Just as I was finishing the bland prison breakfast, a guard rushed in with panic on his face. "There's been an incident," he barked. The room buzzed with whispers as he announced, "Someone tried to break into the women's holding block last night." My blood turned to ice. I already knew who it was. The guard's words sent a shiver down my spine. Someone tried to break into the women's holding block last night. Every woman in the cell block gasped, whispering frantically, but I sat frozen, staring at the wall. I didn't need to ask who it was. My heart already knew. David. Even behind hospital stitches, even with the law on his side, it wasn't enough for him. He wanted me back under his roof, under his control. And if he couldn't have that, he would take me by force. The guard searched the block, asking questions, but of course no one knew anything. Or at least they said they didn't. But in my gut I felt it. David was closer than ever. Later that day, Michael returned with the lawyer he'd hired. She was a sharp woman named Linda, with eyes that looked like they had seen every trick in the book. She sat across from me, sliding papers across the table. "Clara," she said firmly, "I believe you. But belief isn't enough in court. We need evidence. Medical records, photos of injuries, testimony. Do you have anything like that?" Shame washed over me. I shook my head. I covered everything. I never told anyone. I was too scared. Linda sighed but didn't give up. "Then we'll find another way. I'll subpoena the hospital records from when you came in after his beatings. If there's even a single doctor's note, we can use it." Michael leaned in. "And if the system fails, I'll still protect you. I don't care what it takes." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of courage flicker inside me. Maybe, just maybe, I could fight this. Not just for me, but for the baby. But courage has a way of being tested quickly. That night, as I lay in my cell, I heard a noise. A low scraping sound, like metal against stone. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But then it grew louder, closer. The other women stirred, whispering nervously. I crept to the bars, my heart hammering. And that's when I saw it. A shadow moving in the hallway. A figure crouching low, dragging something sharp across the floor. I gripped the bars, my breath caught in my throat. The figure stopped right outside my cell. Slowly it lifted its head. And even in the dim light, I saw his face. David. Somehow, someway he had gotten inside the jail. He pressed his finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet. Then with a twisted smile, he whispered through the bars. "Tonight, you're coming with me." His voice slithered through the bars like poison. "Tonight, you're coming with me." My knees almost gave way. My hands clutched the cold iron so tight my knuckles turned white. "How did you?" He cut me off with a smirk. "I told you, Clara. The law doesn't protect you from me. These walls can't keep me out. Nothing can." The other women in the block stirred, whispering nervously. One of them, a tall woman named Grace, stepped closer and hissed at him. "You need to leave, whoever you are. Guards will be here any second." David didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me, burning into me like a brand. "I'll be back when they're not watching," he whispered. "And when I come, I'll take what's mine." Then, as quickly as he appeared, he slipped back into the shadows. The scraping sound of metal faded down the hall until it vanished completely. I collapsed onto the cot, trembling uncontrollably. The women gathered around me, their faces pale with fear. Grace put a hand on my shoulder. "Who was that man?" My throat was dry, but I forced the words out. "My husband." Gasps filled the cell. One woman shook her head. "Lord have mercy. If he got in here once, he'll do it again." Her words sank into me like ice. The next morning I told the guards everything. That David had been inside, that he had threatened me. They searched the halls, checked the cameras but found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No proof. One guard even muttered, "Maybe you imagined it." Imagined it? My body still shook from the sound of his whisper. My heart still raced from the sight of his face. No, it was real. I knew it was real. Later that day, Michael and Linda came back. I begged them to believe me, to do something. Michael slammed his fist on the table. "He got inside? Then you're not safe here. We need to push for bail now." Linda nodded, her eyes narrowing. "I'll file the paperwork." If we can prove she's in danger, the judge might approve it. For the first time I had hope again. A way out. But hope never lasted long when David was near. That night the cell block was quiet. Too quiet. Most of the women were asleep, but I couldn't close my eyes. I sat upright on the cot, clutching my stomach, whispering prayers over my unborn child. And then it happened. A deafening alarm blared through the jail. Red lights flashed. Doors clanged open and shut. The women around me screamed and scrambled to their feet. The guard's voice crackled through the intercom. Emergency lockdown. Inmate escape attempt in progress. My blood froze. And deep in my soul, I already knew who it was. David was back. The sirens wailed so loudly it felt like the walls themselves were screaming. Women shouted, guards rushed down the halls, and the red lights pulsed like a heartbeat of doom. My hands gripped the bars of my cell as panic surged through me. Who's escaping? One woman cried. Another yelled back. Does it matter? We're all trapped like rats now. But I knew. Deep in my gut I knew. This wasn't just any escape attempt. This was David. The guards barked orders, slamming metal doors shut. But the chaos only grew. From somewhere down the corridor I heard a loud clang, like a pipe hitting the floor, followed by the sharp crack of glass shattering. The women gasped. Grace grabbed my arm. Clara, if it's that man again. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Moments later, a guard ran past our block, his face pale. He's loose inside the facility. Everyone stay in place. Loose. Inside. The words stabbed me like knives. My breath quickened. I staggered back from the bars, clutching my belly. My baby shifted inside me, as if sensing the danger. My tears came hot and fast. Please God, don't let him find me. But prayers didn't stop the sound that came next. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Coming closer. The sirens drowned out everything else, but those steps, slow, steady, relentless, echoed like a death march. Then through the haze of flashing red lights I saw him. David. He was no longer in his prison uniform. Somehow he had gotten hold of guard clothing. The shirt was bloodstained, the badge ripped halfway off. His face was twisted with fury and triumph. When his eyes locked on mine, he grinned. There you are, he mouthed through the bars. The women screamed. Grace shoved me behind her, standing as a barrier, but David just laughed. Do you really think anyone here can protect you from me? A guard appeared at the far end of the hall, shouting. Stop right there. David didn't even flinch. He pulled something from behind his back. A shard of broken glass, jagged and gleaming under the red light. He waved it slowly, his eyes never leaving me. If they try to take me, he hissed, I'll spill blood right here. The guard raised his weapon, but David lunged forward, pressing the glass against the throat of the nearest inmate through the bars. The woman screamed, her eyes wide with terror. The entire block froze. And David smiled, his voice calm in the chaos. Let me into Clara's cell, or she dies. The woman's scream pierced the air as David pressed the shard of glass tighter against her throat. A thin line of blood trickled down her neck. The guards froze, their weapons raised but their hands trembling. Put it down, sir, one shouted. Step back from the cell. David laughed, a cruel, chilling sound. You're not in charge here. I am. He dragged the shard across the bars, letting the screeching metal echo through the corridor. I want Clara. Open her cell, or she dies. And maybe the next one too. And the next. The women cowered, backing away from the bars. Grace stood firm, though her face was pale. She muttered to me, Stay behind me, Clara. Don't move. But I couldn't stay still. My heart pounded so loud it drowned the sirens. My hands rested on my belly, and I whispered to the baby inside me, Hold on. Please hold on. The guard at the end of the hall tried again. Listen, you won't get out of here alive. Drop the weapon before it's too late. David snarled, his eyes blazing. Too late? It's already too late. You locked me in a cage like an animal. You think bars can keep me from my wife? From my child? He slammed his fist against the bars of my cell, the sound making me flinch. He leaned closer, his voice dropping into a venomous whisper only I could hear. I'll carve my name into your skin if I have to. No one takes you away from me, Clara. Not your dead sister, not Michael, not these guards. No one. Tears stung my eyes, but I lifted my chin. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. You'll never have me again, David. Never. Something in his face twisted. Anger, madness, desperation. He shoved the terrified inmate aside and raised the shard high. His muscles tense, his body ready to strike. The guards shouted, aiming their weapons. The women screamed, some collapsing to the floor. And I could only stare, frozen, as the world seemed to slow around me. David's arm came down in a violent swing. The shard slashed through the air. And then a deafening bang echoed through the block. One of the guards had pulled the trigger. David staggered, the shard clattering to the ground. He looked down at his chest, his eyes wide with shock. Blood blossomed across the guard's stolen uniform. But instead of falling, he looked back up at me, his mouth curling into a sick smile. You can't escape me, he rasped. And then, he lunged straight toward my cell door. Blood poured from David's chest, but his body moved with a terrifying strength, like pure rage was carrying him forward. He slammed into my cell door with all his weight, rattling the iron bars so hard I stumbled back in fear. His hands shot through the gaps, clawing at the air, reaching for me. Clara, he roared, his voice echoing through the block. You're mine. Do you hear me? Mine. The guard shouted, rushing closer. Get down. Get down now. But David didn't stop. His blood smeared across the bars as he gripped them tighter. His eyes wild, foam gathering at the corners of his mouth. He shoved his arms so far through the bars that his skin scraped raw, his fingers clawing inches from my dress. The women screamed, scattering to the far corners of the block. Grace grabbed me and yanked me back against the wall. Stay away from him. The guards fired again. Another bang exploded in the air, and David staggered, his body jerking. Still, he refused to fall. His rage burned hotter than pain. With one final roar, he grabbed the bars with both hands and shook them violently, his blood dripping onto the floor like rain. His voice was guttural, inhuman. If I can't have you, he growled, then I'll destroy you. And then his free hand darted to his belt. My eyes widened in horror. He had something hidden there. He pulled it out, a lighter. Click, click. A tiny flame burst to life, glowing in his bloody hand. Gasps filled the block. I froze as the heat of the flame flickered in his eyes. David grinned through the blood on his lips. I'll burn this whole place down if I have to, he spat. You. The baby. Every last one of them. The women shrieked, pounding on their bars. The guards shouted orders into their radios, panicked voices overlapping. But David's hand was steady. The fire danced dangerously close to the thin blanket draped across my cot. I could smell it, the sharp, bitter scent of smoke beginning to rise. And then he whispered my name one last time, his voice hoarse and broken. Clara. He dropped the flame. The moment the flame touched the blanket, fire erupted like a beast set free. It spread fast, crawling up the cot, licking the walls, filling the cell block with black smoke. Women screamed and coughed, some banging on the bars, others collapsing to the floor. Fire! Fire! A guard bellowed into his radio. Alarms blared even louder, red lights flashing through the choking haze. I stumbled backward, pressing my hands protectively against my belly. The heat hit me in waves, searing my skin, stealing the air from my lungs. David laughed, a terrible, broken sound, even as his body trembled from blood loss. He clung to the bars of my cell, his face lit by the glow of the fire. If I can't have you alive, he rasped, then I'll take you in the flames. The guards rushed forward, some with extinguishers, others trying to drag women from the block. But the fire was faster than they were. The smoke thickened until every breath felt like swallowing knives. Grace grabbed my arm, her voice hoarse. We have to get out of here, Clara. Now. But the doors were locked. The fire crawled higher, sparks raining down. My baby kicked hard inside me as if screaming for escape. Suddenly, another gunshot cracked through the smoke. David jerked violently, finally collapsing to his knees. His bloody hand released the bars, the lighter clattering to the floor. For the first time his body sagged, weak and human. But even as he fell, his eyes found mine. I'll never let you go, he whispered, his voice fading into the roar of the fire. And then he collapsed completely, his body motionless against the floor. The guards swarmed him, dragging him away, but my relief was short-lived. The flames had spread to the ceiling. A beam cracked and splintered, crashing down onto the floor just a few feet from my cell. Sparks exploded everywhere. The entire block shook. "Evacuate! Evacuate now!" a guard shouted. But I was still trapped, the fire closing in around me. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, and I clutched my stomach, praying my baby would survive what I might not. And then through the smoke and fire I saw Michael. He had broken past the guards, his face streaked with soot, his eyes wild with desperation. He pressed against the bars of my cell, coughing, shouting my name. "Clara! Hold on. I'm here. I'll get you out." The smoke grew thicker, the fire hotter, the ceiling groaning above us. And just as Michael reached for the lock, there was a deafening crack. A burning beam broke loose from above, falling straight toward me. The burning beam plummeted toward me with a roar. I threw my arms over my head, bracing for the crushing blow. But at the very last second, Michael lunged through the bars, grabbing me by the shoulders and yanking me back. The beam slammed against the cot instead, splintering into fiery shards that scattered across the floor. Sparks burned holes in my dress, searing my skin. I screamed, the smoke choking me. But Michael's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me, Clara. Don't you dare give up." I could barely see his face through the smoke, but his hands never let go of mine. Guards shouted behind him, trying to pull him away, but he fought them off, his desperation stronger than their orders. "Get her out," he yelled at them. "Open the damn door." One guard fumbled with the keys, his hands trembling as the fire roared louder. Finally, the lock clicked. The heavy cell door swung open with a groan. Michael rushed inside, pulling me into his arms. My knees buckled, but he lifted me effortlessly, holding me close against his chest. The heat seared us from all sides, but in his embrace, I felt the faintest flicker of safety. "We have to move," Grace shouted, coughing violently as guards began herding the women toward the exit. Michael carried me through the smoke-filled hallway, his shirt pressed against my face to shield me from the fumes. My lungs screamed for air, my belly heavy with the life inside me, but I clung to him, whispering through cracked lips, "Don't let go, don't let me go." "I won't," he said firmly, his voice breaking. "Never again." We pushed forward, flames clawing at the walls, the ceiling groaning above us. Behind us, the fire devoured everything, cots, blankets, metal beams. And in the distance, somewhere in that inferno, I thought I heard a faint cough, a faint laugh. David, even dying, even burned and bleeding, he still haunted me. The guard shoved open the emergency doors and cool night air rushed in. Women stumbled out, some collapsing, some weeping, others silent with shock. Michael carried me across the threshold, my body limp in his arms. For one brief moment, I felt the night air on my skin, sweet and cool after the choking smoke. Relief washed over me. But just as we reached the courtyard, a violent explosion shook the ground. The jail behind us erupted in fire, the blast hurling debris in every direction. Michael dropped to the ground, shielding me with his body as flaming fragments rained around us. The world spun, sirens blared, people screamed. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, Michael was still on top of me, unmoving. His back was covered in blood and soot. "Michael," I whispered, shaking him weakly. "Michael, please." But he didn't answer. "Michael." My voice cracked as I shook him again, my tears spilling onto his soot-streaked face. "Please don't leave me. Please." For a terrifying moment, there was nothing. His chest was still, his eyes closed, his lips pale. The world blurred around me. The flames, the sirens, the screams. All I could see was him. Then faint. Fragile. A breath. His chest rose, shallow but real. "Michael," I sobbed, clutching his face with trembling hands. His eyes fluttered open, weak and glazed with pain but alive. He tried to speak but coughed instead, blood on his lips. "Clara, you're safe. That's all that matters." "No," I cried, shaking my head violently. "You matter. Don't you dare leave me." Paramedics rushed over, pulling him onto a stretcher. They lifted me too, covering me in blankets, slipping an oxygen mask over my face. My body was weak, my baby kicking inside me as if reminding me we had survived. Somehow, against all odds, we had survived. Hours later at the hospital, I lay in a clean bed, clutching my swollen belly. Michael was in the room next door, doctors working on his injuries. I prayed endlessly, whispering promises to God, to my sister Abigail, to my unborn child. When the doctor finally came in, his face was serious but soft. "He's stable. It will be a long recovery, but he'll live." Relief broke me into sobs. For the first time in what felt like forever, they were tears of hope. But even in that moment of peace, the nightmare wasn't fully gone. News spread quickly that David's body had never been recovered from the ashes. Some said the fire consumed him completely. Others whispered he might have escaped in the chaos. The thought haunted me, but deep inside, I realized something. Whether David lived or died no longer controlled me. What mattered was the choice I had made, the fight I had given. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was a survivor. Months later, I held my newborn daughter in my arms. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, her soft cries filling the room with life. Michael sat beside me, pale but stronger, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. Looking at her, I whispered, "You will never know fear like I did. You will know love. You will know safety. And you will know strength." Michael smiled faintly, pressing his lips to my forehead. "And she'll know a mother who fought back." I looked into the camera that recorded my story and took a deep breath. My name is Clara. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm 64 years old. If you followed my story until now, thank you. Please subscribe, like, and click the notifications button because I still have many stories to share. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I paused, my baby cooing softly against my chest. And remember this. No matter how broken you feel, no matter how strong the darkness seems, you can fight back. You can rise again. If I survived, so can you. The screen faded to black. The story ended, but my life had just begun.